other one in Chattagam?
Good
In
afternoon.
your time when you were there?
It's afternoon, yeah. So good afternoon, firstly, to everyone. Um, yeah, the pitch. I think from the time I played to the time I was on the coaching staff here, um, has probably changed a little bit. When we played, it was like a hard and crusty that would break up and crumble, and then the spinners start coming into the game. But the bounce was really low. But then when I coached, which was probably about 10, 15 years later, the surface underneath seemed a lot softer. Even now when we are here, the water level seems quite high, and underneath the surface it seems quite soft. Having said that, when we look at the pitch now, since yesterday when we arrived, we understand that there hasn't been any cricket played on the particular ground here in Mirpur since about March or April. So the grounders had, or the squares had, a good time to kind of recover. They do play a lot of cricket here usually, and therefore when I was coaching here, they used to just sprinkle a lot of grass, loose grass, throw it on the pitch, roll it in, and it appears as if there's grass on the pitch, but there wasn't really. Now, because the ground and the squares had time to recover, there's actually some live grown grass on the square. So how that's going to play and how much of it they leave on the surface, that'd be interesting to see.
Thanks, Johan. Stu?
Thanks, Lucy. Hello, Ashwell.
I'll just do.
I just want to go with a bit of your insight from your days with Bangladesh quickly. There seems to be quite a willy-wonky around Shakib for that test match. We've also seen the now former coach Athar Singer get chucked out. What kind of an effect do you think those things are going to have on them? Because it's quite a big series, not just for the Proteas but for them too.
Yeah, it is a big series for both teams. But as far as sort of Shakib is concerned, obviously there's speculation from people in the public and in media, but there's been no word officially from Bangladesh Cricket Board about whether he's going to be available for the series or not. So until then, we will obviously wait for confirmation. Does that affect their sort of their environment, their dressing room? I'm sure it does. I mean, Shakib is obviously an important player, an all-rounder, much like Jacques Kallis used to be for us back in the day. If he's not available, it affects the balance of the team. Do you look to go with the left arm orthodox? Do you go with the batsman? Do you try and find another person who is like Shakib, who is an all-rounder who bats and bowls left arm spin? They're fortunate that they do have another left arm orthodox spinner, which probably would be in the lineup in Tijul. So from that point of view, they got that base covered. So whether they then just go for another batsman to replace Shakib. Having said all that, as we said before, we don't know whether he's going to be here or not. But it certainly will have an effect on the dressing room in terms of selection, but also, a little bit of uncertainty. Ideally, you don't want that kind of uncertainty. But I think, it's not the first time that something like that's happened in Bangladesh, where there's uncertainty. Also, particularly around the same player, whether he's going to be available or not. So it's nothing new for them, I would suggest.
Thanks, Stu. Zahir?
Just something,
sorry.
just on the coach as well, Ash. I don't know how much you know about that situation, but having a coach, get sanctioned in the way that Athar Singer has been, so in such a short time before this match, the effect that will have as well, please, man. Thanks.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to bump into Phil Simmons in Dubai on the way here, and I wasn't sure where he was headed. It was nice to see him, obviously, but he incidentally was on the same flight as us to take over the head coach role here. So, yeah, it's not ideal that you have to appoint a coach so soon before the series. And it's not ideal circumstances for the previous coach to lose his position, or if that is indeed the case.
Thanks, Stu. Zahir?
How's it, Ash?
Zahir, good afternoon.
Question. You obviously, you don't have, you talk about losing players, you obviously don't have Pemba in your side. He's the only one that's played in Bangladesh for that first test match. Just how long does it actually take to get accustomed to conditions in Bangladesh? Because obviously quite unique, quite different, the humidity, the heat, all of that, and obviously the surfaces. And how do you go around advising these folks who never actually set foot in Bangladesh before?
So from a heat point of view, what we're trying to discuss obviously is a breakdown of play, which is it's quite simple really. I mean, every hour you get a break. So after an hour you can have some water, drinks break, whatever the case may be. After another hour it's lunch. You play an hour after lunch, it's another drinks break. So test match cricket does have enough stoppages, not stoppages in play, but opportunities for you to recover from the heat, take on some liquids, all of those type of things. So in terms of getting accustomed to the conditions, I think some of the boys have already mentioned that the West Indies was actually, from a weather point of view, tougher than this. We've arrived here and it's quite, I have to say, a little pleasant actually compared to what it can be. So for this time of year, it's not as hot as what it can be. So from a weather point of view, I think the boys will be okay, especially having had that experience in the West Indies where, it was quite hot and humid there as well. And then from the surfaces point of view, you're quite right in saying that there isn't a lot of test match experience on the surfaces here. However, what we try, and because we have quite a few young players, and young in terms of test match cricket, what we try to point out to them is that you do certain things that you don't realize, but over the course of your career, from the time you turn pro, let's take somebody like a Matthew Breedsker who grows up in PE versus maybe somebody like Rickleton. You turn pro as an 18, 19-year-old, and you take those two guys, for example. You're accustomed to playing at St. George's, the one is accustomed to playing at the Wanderers, but in your years as a professional, 3, 4, 5 years, would have gone around the country and you would have had to adapt your style of play to all the different pitches around the country within South Africa. People, like there's places, I remember with the Cobras, we had to play some of our home games in Oudtshoorn, and that can spin quite a lot, a lot more than what it does at Newlands. So, and what we're trying to encourage the guys is that just as they've had to adapt their game within the country as young professionals, we just see this as another opportunity to tick another country with different conditions on that box of adapting and adapting to the conditions that's in front of you, because every pitch doesn't play the same in South Africa around the country, and the same in Bangladesh. The pitch in Dhaka will be different to the pitch in Chittagong, which is a lot flatter. This one is can be slow, sticks in the pitch a little bit more. So what we're trying to encourage the guys is just treat it the same as you would having to adapt to different conditions at home, and give yourself a little bit of time to, as you say, get accustomed to this particular surface that you're playing on. But that word, adaptability, is a massive word in Test cricket or in international cricket, in any cricket really, because from ground to ground, it's always different, and you have to allow yourself a little bit of time to get accustomed to that particular ground.
Thanks, Zahir. We'll take the last couple of questions, starting with Morgan, then we'll look to wrap with Stu.
Thanks, Lucy. Hi, Ash. Ash, you guys did have a positive tour to the Caribbean recently, but what are the work-ons that you feel you you guys need to improve on there in Bangladesh, and maybe also the positives that you guys can build on going forward?
Yeah, I think in terms of things that we like to work on or improve on is partnerships, bigger partnerships. So, certain places where, or conditions in certain matches where batting conditions can become tough. You can see it in South Africa as well, where you have, for instance, last season, pitch at Centurion, as soon as new batters come to the crease, you felt like you had a big chance. But as soon as there's a partnership going on, you feel like it's hard for bowlers to take a wicket. So when you find yourselves in those situations where you have a good partnership going on, that we extend them as long as possible. So big partnerships is one area that we want to make sure that we capitalize on. When we get two guys at the crease going really nicely, we want to build on those partnerships, make them as big as possible. That's one aspect. From the West Indies, I suppose the biggest thing is that you win the series. We want to keep that positivity. We want to keep that belief that wherever we go, on away tours or home, that whoever we come up against, that we can overcome them. And so, sometimes that's easier said than done, because you can make a big thing about the foreign conditions when you go to a foreign place. But like I said, the adapting to the conditions shouldn't take that long in terms of batting. In every match that you play, you've got to allow yourself a bit of time to adapt to the conditions. But the most important thing for me is the mentality. Just like we believe we could go to the West Indies and win, it's important that wherever we go, home or away, we believe that we can win. And that's one area that that's quite important to me as a batting coach. Obviously, when you scale that down from the team to the batting unit, it relates to, as a batting unit, we can put a big score on the board in any country around the world.
Thanks. Ash, I just wanted to ask about a bowler in your group, in the Proteas group. KG's on the brink of a personal landmark over there, but he's also very, he seems very intent on being a driving force for the team as a whole. He seems very strongly motivated by that. What kind of impact do you see, and I don't know how long you've been with the group, but in the time that you have been with them now, what kind of impact have you seen from him among the rest of the players and their willingness to kind of follow any example he sets?
Yeah, I think he's massive in terms of, obviously he's a world-class player, and those stats, that's leading up to 300 wickets at an average of 22. It's an impeccable record. But more importantly is his attitude, and as you say, his attitude towards Test cricket, and what he brings to the environment. The language from KG is always positive. He's a leader in the team, even though he doesn't wear the armband as such. He's the leader in the team in more ways than one, not just the leader of the bowling attack, he's the leader in the team. And what he brings is elite mentality. That's what he brings. And that can only be positive. And the young guys, a lot of young guys, able to feed off that, because it's the language, it's the respect for the badge, it's what we're playing for in terms of, the country that we represent. So everything that's coming from KG is elite mentality, and that is crucial within a national team. Besides the fact that he obviously leads from the front in terms of his bowling, he also leads from the front in terms of a positive attitude and dare I say an attitude towards Test cricket, because let's face it, I'm not saying this about this group of players, but in the world of Test cricket, it seems as if Test cricket is not as glamorous anymore, or not as exciting, or not as, obviously not as profitable as some of the other options out there around the world. But here's a guy who is able to probably play in each and every one of these leagues around the world and earn as much more money as he wants. But playing Test cricket for his country means a lot, and that is a message that he tries to get across to everyone in the environment.
Thanks. Thanks, Stu. Sorry. Zahir, to conclude.
Ash, just a short, sharp one for me. Reacquainted with Carl Verreynne. There's a lot of talk about his technique all the time at Test cricket. You obviously worked with him at a domestic level. Just what space is Carl in, and how do you get the best out of Carl Verreynne? Short, sharp.
Yeah, I mean, getting the best out of his biggest strength is his mentality. So, and this is what I loved about Carl when he was a young professional at the Cobras when I was the coach, is that he believes that whatever the circumstances or the situation, that he's going to win that battle. And so, you know, he's never bothered about what people says about his technique. It's in his mind, there's a challenge, somebody's coming with a ball, or a team is coming with a bowling attack and a strategy, but he believes he's gonna, ultimately he believes that he's gonna overcome. And that is his biggest strength. So while people are paying a lot of attention to his technique, he finds a way. He finds a way to come up with answers, and that's because of mindset. And that's his strongest attribute, and that's what, you know, going back all those years ago, that's what stood out to me about the player.